momentous upsets that went down this weekend, where we got it right, where we got it wrong, and then also previewing every single game from week 7. But most importantly, we have to start out and get the worst out of week 6 and the worst going into week 7 out of the way, get that out of our system. And brought to you by Brick Jameson on the Brickyard Live Show, the best independent sports show, I mean, on the
You got them right.
interwebs. Rick Jameson with another bottom 5 of the NFL.
And it's important with these lists to know who has graduated from last week's abysmal performances. Graduating from this list is the Las Vegas Raiders. You get a win, you graduate from the worst top 5. Good win against the Titans. We might be talking about the Titans later on in this list, but for now, the Raiders, you get a win, you're off the list. Another team that graduates from this list, you go and trade for Uncle Flacco. You cover the spread. You don't win the game, but you look better than you did with Jake Browning. You cover the spread. You make some money for the fans that are gamblers. So you have graduated from the worst top 5. Honorable mention, the Cardinals. Of course. Why would I not talk about the Cardinals on this show? They didn't even lose. They didn't look that bad. They started a quarterback controversy in Arizona. Is Jacoby Brissett the guy over Kyler Murray? They lost a fan. They're probably their only fan, the only fan that I knew of in Arizona. The Cardinals, they're gone now. They don't even have a fan anymore. So look what you did, Cardinals. Honorable mention to the Cardinals, but you didn't play bad enough to enter the worst top 5 yet. At number 5, let's get the Ravens out of the way. I mean, I have a little bit of empathy. There's no Lamar Jackson, but your defense is disgusting. You have one of the worst turnover differentials in the entire league. You mustered 3 points against the Rams. You have 37 minutes time of possession. You run for almost 200 yards. You have not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 goal to go 1 yards with Derrick Henry, and you muster 0 points. Therefore, you are number 5 on the worst top 5. At number 4, a team that I've been so nice to. I've tried to. I feel bad. It's bad enough that you're in Ohio. It's bad enough that you play second fiddle to Cincinnati. Cleveland Browns. Is it time that we talk about how bad the Browns are? And the worst part about this is you have Dylan Gabriel, who, by the way, completed 4 passes over 10 yards this past weekend. The worst part about it is you move on for Baker Mayfield, who is now currently the MVP, not only to the Brickyard, who said it first, but also to the NFL. NFL has him as a consensus MVP currently. And now the next funniest part, first of all, you draft Shedeur Sanders, and you refuse to make him QB2 after the Joe Flacco trade. You're going to put Kenny Pickett at number 2. Why did you draft Shedeur Sanders? We don't know. But the most funny part about this all is you have a good coach in Kevin Stefanski, 2-time coach of the year. And he's going to be fired after this year and make another team very good, just like what Baker Mayfield has done for Tampa Bay. So congratulations. When it's bad in Cleveland, just move on. It'll be better elsewhere. At number 3, I'm going to have the Dolphins here. Last week, it was Rico Dowdle who turned into a superstar for the Panthers. And this week, it is Kamani Vidal who started him in fantasy. Not me. 138 scrimmage yards entering the game. He had 200 scrimmage yards in his entire career. He literally doubled his scrimmage yards thanks to what is left of the Dolphins defense. On top of that, you have a very competitive. On the opposite end, we have the most valuable player, Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes. On the other side, we have the MVP, or maybe the LVP, least valuable player. In Tua, he's in a tight race with Geno Smith, making Geno Smith very nervous in the interceptions race after throwing 3 this past week. So Dolphins at number 3. At number 2, rest in peace, Brian Callahan. 4-23 as a starter. You hate to see it. Also, Griffin, shout out to Griffin, fan of the show. He's a Cardinals fan. That's tough to see. Poor guy. I wish you the best. We have the Titans at number 2. 4-19 under Brian Callahan. But if you flash backwards, we are history buffs on this show. Just 3 years ago, you had Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, and Mike Vrabel on your team. Since then, you trade A.J. Brown for a bag of trips, a.k.a. Traylon Burks, who last time I saw him was holding a cardboard box outside of the Titan Stadium. Derrick Henry, he moves on. He signs with the Ravens. He rushes for almost 2,000 yards. And Mike Vrabel, who you fired because he wasn't good enough to lead the rebuild. He has now rebuilt the New England Patriots, who now lead the AFC East. So not only do you no longer have a coach, You have a questionable quarterback. You have no true receiver. You have no legitimate running back either. Titans, shame on you. But don't worry, nobody, and I mean nobody, can outstink the New York Jets. Of course. How could I not put the Jets on here? Not only are you the only winless team in the NFL, not only are you the only team to have 2 games under 50 passing yards. Yes, Justin Fields, that's you. But this game, oh, it's in London. Oh, it's stinky. It stinks worse than their food. That's crazy. But you muster a measly negative 10 yards. Negative 10 yards. So if Justin Fields wants to hit 5,000 yards, he only needs 5,010 yards to get there. Jets. Not only that, one last thing to mention before I ridicule the Jets. It took them 6 games under the mastermind that is Aaron Glenn at head coach. It took them 6 games to get a takeaway on the defensive side of the ball. They also have the worst defense in the NFL. That's crazy because I thought he was the defensive mastermind behind Detroit. But you have the worst turnover differential. You have negative 10 passing yards in London. And you're 0-6. So you might very well get the next first overall pick, which you're sure to ruin eventually. So New York Jets, number 1. Worst team according to Brickyard.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be number 1. I feel like the Jets, my prediction's going to come true where they're going to end up beating Miami at the end of the season to lose out on the number 1 pick. You could have both of those teams competing. I don't know if they play the Titans this year, but maybe you beat or lose to the Miami Dolphins and then end up giving them the number 1 overall pick. So I think that's definitely in the Jets' future. It's also offensive that this is a London game and they put this game on at what? You're on the West Coast. You'd have to get up at 6 a.m. to watch this slop. I mean, we are not sending our best over to England. I don't know if this is reparations for what they did to us or for World War II, for us saving them twice in World War I, World War II, the Revolutionary War, but we're definitely not sending our best teams over to London at this point. I mean, the Broncos just barely squeaking by against the Jets, who didn't even have an offense in this game. I mean, if you want to replicate soccer, I bet this is as close as it gets.
Yeah, I woke up and it was already the 3rd quarter and it was 11-10. I'm like, oh, glad I woke up for this game. I wake up, it's 11-10. I'm like, boy, am I missing out. And I just knew. I'm like, oh, it's 11-10. The Jets have the lead. We all know they're not going to win this game, right? Then I look at the stats. Justin Fields had 30 yards at the time. He did muster another 15 yards. Good job, Justin Fields. 9 sacks in this game. You have Breece Hall, who rushed for 2 yards a carry. Your number 1 receiver was Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds. And I don't think anybody remembers Josh Reynolds even plays football anymore. Surprise, he plays for the Jets. That game, I wake up and I'm like, I'm going back to bed. Why am I going to watch this game? Why am I going to give up? The thing is like, if we're going to punish the NFL for these bad games, we just need to not watch it. We need to boycott this game. And that's exactly what I did. I went back to bed, woke up, got a coffee, didn't watch a second of this game. And I'm really glad I did because, frankly, my mental health is in a better place. And I didn't get to watch this 13-11 masterclass against the 0-6 Jets and the Broncos, who are a 4-2 team, but maybe not as good as we think, potentially.
Yeah, that is a good question. Like, I wonder how good the NFL's like ratings are, like in those 9 o'clock games versus like 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock. Like, what's their least watched game of the week?
That is a good question. Maybe Google knows. I will ask. But worst rated NFL game week 6. I bet it's the Jets game. I mean, good Lord. That was bad.
It's like everyone's at church too, like already.
Yeah, I'm like, why would I even want to watch this game? Especially like Broncos and Jets alone doesn't wake me up necessarily. Bo Nix versus Justin Fields, not necessarily the Mahomes and Allen battle that we tend to see, but then I wake up and Justin Fields has 30 yards. Really? He ends up passing for 45 yards, negative 10 if you count the 9 sacks that they gave up in this game. I mean, shout out Patrick Surtain, shout out their D-line, but like, good Lord, this game was hideous to watch.
Yeah, no, it's a tough game to watch. So let's go over some of the top teams to watch. And this is going to be the top 5 teams according to the Brickyard. We're going to be going over all teams we think could potentially make a run right now. And then team 5 is normally a pulse check. And teams that are not on it this week, that have been on it in the past, Philadelphia Eagles, you have lost 2 in a row and you just got obliterated at home. You're not on this. The Buffalo Bills, for some reason, when they are 4-0, I just decided I don't want to put the Buffalo Bills on this list. It doesn't sound right. So, announcement, the Buffalo Bills are still not a top 5 team in the NFL. I won't do it, and I feel justified now because they've lost 2 games in a row. So, at our pulse check at number 5, a team that is coming out of nowhere and has the signs to be one of the best dark horse teams in the NFC, and they still have an outside shot of winning their division here. They had what can you say? A historic performance on Thursday night where the Giants come out here and just obliterate the Eagles. And the thing with the Giants is they've had their issues on offense for a long time. You saw the frustration on Brian Daboll's face because he had to deal with Daniel Jones for the past few years, and he ended up getting Daniel Jones to the playoffs and winning a playoff game with him versus Kirk Cousins, which is a very impressive feat that Brian Daboll was able to pull off. And then you start looking around at their defensive line where you have players like Brian Burns on the defensive line. You still have Bobby Okereke. It is not Okereke. It is Okereke. And then you also have your elite edge rusher that you drafted this year. And then you have Cam Scatabo, who is an absolute tone setter for that team. You look at him, he's a guy that actually changes the culture. You have some of the veterans who look at him like, wow, I haven't had this much fun playing football in a long time. Him and Jackson Dart are doing their little pit bull, like headbutt. You're getting shirtless with Ryan Fitzpatrick after. So this team not only passes the vibe check, but just the explosiveness of their offense with Jackson Dart. Like, keep in mind, it took Josh Allen 3 years to be good. And then Jackson Dart is already showing signs of being a really good quarterback. You have someone like Cam Scatabo. And I think in November and December, this Giants defense is also going to be a problem. So I think that win versus the Eagles is definitely a statement. This team has a chance to go on a run, challenge the Commanders and the Eagles, who look a little bit shaky so far this season. That brings me to at number 4. This team was on the list, and they actually moved up from number 5 to number 4. We have the New England Patriots. You can put them at number 4 because now they are at the top of the AFC East. You have the Buffalo Bills start out 4-0. We're cruising, and then Sunday night they run into a wall, and that wall's name was Christian Barmore. And then Mike Vrabel was able to shut down the run game for the Buffalo Bills, actually make Josh Allen try and beat them. They're able to turn him over. He had his first interception of the year, which ended up bleeding into Monday Night Football. And now you're sitting on top of the AFC East where you have Drake May getting better each game. And then the defense is what's going to be the difference. And that'll be the best part for this team heading out the year. So at number 4, we have the New England Patriots. At number 3, have to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've been on this list all season long so far for the most part, outside that 1 week where they had a stumble versus Philadelphia. And then I called just a shot in the dark before the year. I said my dark horse MVP candidate is Baker Mayfield. And what happens? I don't know. He loses his best wide receiver after losing Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and now Emeka Egbuka, who everyone is talking about. And then a brand new wide receiver steps in, gets his first touchdown of the season. The offense continues, and then Baker Mayfield is already in the running for play of the year. When you look at that 3rd and 14 he had versus San Francisco, where the announcer says, yeah, no, he's not going to get anything here. He slips out of it, runs and dives for the first down. He is making MVP plays. This team has been good for a while, done a good job continuing it after Tom Brady. And then also their defense has been what's special. They held Christian McCaffrey to 3.2 yards per carry in week 6. So overall, their defense has been elite as well. At number 1 and 2, it's not really a secret. Both these teams played each other on Sunday night, and the Detroit Lions are at number 2 because the Lions, they've been one of the most consistent teams. They've been a powerhouse in the NFC one of the better defenses, and their defense has pretty much shut down any team they need to shut down. And the reason why they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs is Jared Goff is 2-0 versus Patrick Mahomes. You're not really going to beat someone like Mahomes 3 times in a row. So I think it was fine that they lost this game. I still believe they will have one of the best offenses in the league, and they'll be able to put up points on pretty much anyone. You're due for a loss. It's okay. You stay at number 2. And then the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes looks up and he has 15 total touchdowns, 1,700 passing yards. Now he's etching out Josh Allen and some of those stats and making a actual push for the MVP. The Kansas City Chiefs, if they had to play anyone right now and I was betting on one team, it would be the Chiefs just because of who they are in the past. You have Patrick Mahomes. The defense is playing good enough at this point, but the offense is starting to come alive. You're starting to use players like Hollywood Brown, actually get some trick plays in there, get a little bit of motion set in there. So at number 1, Kansas City, back on the top of the NFL.
Amazing. And that game was so good too. And you have Patrick Mahomes. I mean, struggled a little bit out of the gate in September. Now they're 3-3. It looks like they're going to rattle off another 5-10 wins in a row. And they're back to being the Chiefs. Everyone doubted them. Everyone wants the Chiefs to be out of the list. They want their dynasty to die. But here they are, standing strong. Patrick Mahomes, 15 touchdowns, 1 pick, 1 turnover. That's amazing. And then the Lions didn't get the win, but I still feel like they played fairly well. So top 5, we now have seen the pedigree of excellence in the NFL and a pedigree of disgust in the worst top 5. We have been recapped for the best and the worst. But without further ado, week 6 did occur. You touched on the Giants at number 5, who kicked out the Eagles of their top 5. Eagles and Giants. You want to talk about a Cam Scattaboo masterclass, Jackson Dart masterclass. How about Thursday Night Football? You like touchdowns? How about not 1, not 2, 3 touchdowns for Cam Scattaboo, who's now 2nd in rushing touchdowns in the NFL, rushed for 100 yards, had a few more receiving yards as well. But the Giants, after what looked like Russell Wilson lost in the dark, looked like another season was lost in New York, and then lo and behold, Jackson Dart comes in, and over the last several games with Jackson Dart, they look like a totally different team, a team with energy, a team with swagger, and I love what I've seen from the New York. I believe in them, and I like where you put them at number 5. I think this is a dark horse playoff team potentially.
Yeah, and the reason why I put them at number 5 above a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, above a team like the Washington Commanders, is we have seen this story before, especially with both of these teams. I've seen the Philadelphia Eagles start 11-0 and proceed to lose every single game into the playoffs versus Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield. And then also this game, they just look like a half step behind. They look a little bit disengaged, a little bit disinterested, and you start to see a little bit of that fatigue pull in. I know September is one of the easiest months to win games in the NFL because it's kind of an extension of the preseason. October can be a little bit weird sometimes, but if Philadelphia has a down year this year, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. You just came off a Super Bowl. Not every team is meant to be a dynasty. So I think it's fair to say that Philadelphia could be having an off year, especially because Saquon Barkley doesn't look as explosive as he has in the past. And I think that was really the big play difference maker. And when Jalen Hurts has had to make plays with his arm, he hasn't been the most effective. Maybe he's dealing with an injury. He could also be fatigued from the Super Bowl hangover. And then Jaden Daniels scares me watching him at this point. We're still seeing miscommunications with the Commanders, and then Jaden Daniels is taking some unnecessary hits. So honestly, I think the Giants, when you look at the past with the NFC East, typically you have a team that goes from worst to first and takes the division, and you don't see a repeat winner in this division. So the Philadelphia Eagles historically cannot win the division 2 years in a row. So I do think the Giants do have a real shot, especially Brian Daboll is coaching for his life. And I do, for how much grief we give him, think that he is a good coach.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a good coach. It's hard when you have Tommy DeVito and you have Russell Wilson, who's clearly past his prime at this point. You insert some energy with Jackson Dart, and you saw just how desperate that Brian Daboll was. As soon as Jackson Dart gets banged up a little bit, he's going into the medical tent. He's begging him, like, please, we cannot have Russell Wilson. I've never seen somebody in such a short amount of time get booed so quickly. Russell Wilson, we're talking about a Super Bowl champion, potential Hall of Famer. He was in the drive for 4 plays, threw one horrible ball, gets sacked, and you just get pours booing in from New York. Now he's got Jackson Dart. He's got Cam Scatterbo. And the craziest thing about the Giants is they don't even have Malik Neighbors this year. So next year, when nobody's believing in the Giants and they get Malik Neighbors and maybe another receiver, this offense is actually going to be a fun watch overall. And they're going to be a high-scoring offense, I think, next year. This year, introduction. But overall, if they keep Brian Daboll and they keep this core that they have, Giants could be really good moving forward.
Yeah, the Giants do have some issues with their secondary, but their pass rush is kind of scary. You have Brian Burns on that back end. There's a reason why you gave him all of that money. So I actually think that this is a team that's going to get better when it goes into the later months, especially with the Giants. Their issue in the past has been their offensive line, and Cam Scatterbo is going to take a lot of that pressure off of Jackson Dart. And Jackson Dart is just a much more forceful and decisive player than Daniel Jones. He still had some turnover issues in that Saints game, but if he has the ability to play like this consistently for about a 6 to 5 game stretch, this is a team that I absolutely could see stumbling into the divisional round.
Yeah, I think the thing is like their defense is really good, and then their offense with Cam Scatterbo and Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart made some nice throws in this game too. Like it's not like he's incapable as a passer either. Definitely know what he can do with his legs. He's already rushed for 200 rushing yards already so far since he's entered the league. As long as he can avoid those big hits, then I think the Giants are due, especially when I look at their schedule. They do face the Eagles again in 2 weeks, but they have the Broncos who, if they can just score on the Broncos, say 17 points, they should win that game. They have the Niners who are banged up, the Bears who we don't trust. And then later on, they face the Raiders. So I definitely see wins on their radar. They do have a relatively tough schedule, but overall, I like what I've seen from them, and I think that they're due. And as far as the Eagles, I think they'll bounce back, but either way, I just think this division is due to have somebody else win this year, whether it's them, the Cowboys, whoever. But I just think the Eagles, there might be a Super Bowl hangover, which is fine. We saw it the
Yeah,
last time they made the Super Bowl. Nothing wrong there.
the Patriots took how long to go back to back? Like
A long time. I don't think they. Yeah,
yeah.
they went back. Yeah, it took them 20 years for someone to go back to back, and it was the Chiefs that ended up doing it relatively recently. But
Was it
yeah, I
16
think
and 17 it took them to do it?
yeah, and so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Eagles bounce back, especially against the Giants. This is a game they should have won, and their schedule does get tough. They face the Vikings next week. They have the Packers coming up, the Lions, the Cowboys, which are always tough. So I think they're in
Are,
for a few losses moving forward.
aren't you
But
worried about like Saquon and AJ Brown too? Like they look slower.
they look slower, and then the players only meeting between him, Saquon, and Jalen Hurts. The fact that 2 of them confirmed that it happened, and then AJ Brown refused to acknowledge that it occurred. I just think there's friction there. AJ Brown has had friction there for about 2 years now. Whether or not they trade him or not, I don't know. But I definitely think his time with the Eagles is coming to an end very soon. Whether it's at the end of the year or they trade him at the deadline, but there's something wrong with that chemistry there. The fact that he's been out targeted by um, Tucker Kraft, for example, and he's getting out targeted by third string receivers on other teams. Like this is a bad sign because AJ Brown is still a top 10 receiver. So I don't know why he's not getting his targets. And I don't know if it's just the Eagles offense, but I think it has to do with his relationship with Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, he'll be in New England soon, so that'll be fun.
Yeah. And they could definitely use him. Speaking of New England, talk about the opposite of what the Eagles are dealing with. Patriots. They went back-to-back games. They beat the Saints. It wasn't necessarily pretty, but 25-19. Drake May has another great game, and they're starting to utilize Travion Henderson more. Kayshon Boutte with 2 touchdowns in this game. They have Demario Douglas in there as well, forcing some fumbles. They do have a bit of a fumbling issue with the Patriots, but they get the win against the Saints. Spencer Rattler plays fairly good. But Patriots, you want to talk about a team that's schedule coming up is nothing but wins. Titans, Browns, Falcons, potentially the Jets moving forward. This is a team that over the next 8 weeks is probably going to win 7 of them. So
Yeah. Maybe the only loss in there is Atlanta, but they're definitely going to go on a run. I think they can finish at least 12-5, and I think this game for New England was really important because when you're a young team and you beat a team like the Buffalo Bills, who has owned your division for the past few years, you really want to see coming off a big game, Sunday Night Football primetime, how they respond the next week. And they came out firing in the first half. It was a little bit clunky in the second half, but I think that's kind of you're on the road. Some of the calls weren't going their way, and then you just had some drives where you didn't get it done, but you didn't necessarily need to. And Drake May has shown that he can do just enough to win the game. And for a young quarterback, I think that's really important. He never panicked at any point. Anytime they needed a play at the end of the game, he was able to make it. So I think for the Patriots, that's fine. Honestly, though, I've been really impressed with how Kellen Moore has turned around the Saints because the Saints were a team that looked dead. They're a team that's kind of a laughing stock in the NFL, but Desmond Ritter's coming out, and the Saints team's coming out, and they're actually trying. They're actually balling a little bit, and they're a fun watch, like mixed in with the red zones. Like anytime the Saints aren't on, they're not like a dreadfully bad watch or a dreadful team like the Cardinals, like the Browns. They're actually, oh, this is kind of a fun bad team. And then it's also kind of funny because Kellen Moore is the head coach and Brandon Staley's the defensive coordinator. And before it was kind of in reverse, except Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a reason why the New Orleans Saints are not on the worst top 5 list every week. Yes, they've lost some games, and like really the only ugly games they've had was against the Seahawks and Bills. But otherwise, like they played close against the Cardinals in week 1. They almost beat the Niners. And then the Patriots game, like they had a couple of opportunities to potentially beat them. So, I mean, they're a fun bet. I
Even the
mean, yes,
Bills game too.
yeah, the Bills game they almost came back and won too. So like this is a team that yes, they're 1-5, and yes, they're not making the playoffs, and yes, they'll probably have a top 5 draft pick. But this is exactly a type of team that we monitor closely, especially when we get to next year. Maybe they do get their quarterback, or maybe they stick with Spencer Rattler because you look at his stats. Spencer Rattler hasn't performed poorly. You have Chris Olave, who's banged up, Rashid Shaheed, and Alvin Kamara. What's left of Alvin Kamara? I know he's a little bit older now, but Spencer Rattler, he's only thrown 1 interception this year. He doesn't have any fumbles either. So only 1 turnover through 6 games for a guy that was a backup last year. He's played really well, and I think he deserves a shot to at least stay with the Saints and see what he can do the rest of the year. But I've been really impressed with the Saints. Yes, they haven't won games, but they've been competitive, which I feel like in a rebuilding team, this is what you're going to want to see for a team like the Saints.
Yeah, especially like when you have a coach like Kellen Moore, like I want to look at a bad team and see if they're actually having fun. And this team does look like they're getting better each week and they're going out there and competing. So he still has the locker room. And I do think you can point to a situation like the Lions where Dan Campbell stepped into a really bad situation and then had some tough seasons. You had some growing pains there, but give it 2-3 years with Kellen Moore. He's been a young offensive coach that a lot of people have wanted for a while. So I think this team could be competitive again.
Yeah, especially if they get a new quarterback or if they can develop Spencer Rattler to what he can be. Their offense is not the problem right now, honestly. I think it's more or less their defense, how old it is at this point. But I like what I've seen from them. And as far as the Patriots, they had another good win. So Drake May, top 5 in every statistical category with completion rating, QBR, touchdowns. So Drake May in the MVP conversation, and the Saints, they're a good bad team. So we like what we've seen there. We've already talked about Broncos Jets. Is there anything we need to add about that nightmare of a game?
Horrible. Absolutely terrible. This should be a disgrace. I mean, we are not sending our best overseas. And between watching this game and having to read through, like, all the way through 50 Shades of Grey, I don't know what would be worse, to be honest, at this point.
I just like, again, like we're sending these guys overseas, right? And like typically in America, like we send people overseas, we're trying to send our best, right? Usually it's in war because it's America. That's how we work. But in this game, like we're just sending our worst. This would be like if we sent like a fat gamer Reddit incel guy to be the front lines of war. In this
Yeah, we
game, like
sent
we have
Bosch to the front lines.
yeah, exactly. In this game, we have Broncos Jets. Broncos, like sure, they're 4-2. They're a fine team. They're a good defensive team. Offensively, not so much. But the Jets, Like, why are we making the London people watch the Jets? It's just not fair. 13-11. This game was hideous. I watched maybe 5 minutes of this game. I turned it off. I'm like, this isn't worth getting up early for. 9:30 game. Can we at least have good London games? Like, we've had decent London games this year, but this was one of the worst games of the year by far. 45 passing yards. Cardinals and Colts. This game was closer than I thought it was going to be, but in traditional Cardinals fashion, they blow a fourth quarter lead, and the Colts are now 5-1. Indiana Jones starting to unravel slightly, but huge game from Jonathan Taylor. The Cardinals, I think, honestly, their offense looked better with Jacoby Brissett than what I've seen with Kyler so far. And that includes some being a little banged up with Marvin Harrison, but Cardinals Colts 31-27. Thoughts on this game?
Yeah, it's crazy what happens when your quarterback can see over his own offensive line. Then he can actually locate receivers in the middle of the field and throw a check down. And then when you can do that, it's actually like it opens up the offense to other opportunities where Kyler Murray, when he's in there, he tries hard. He can make a lot of good throws, yes, but his height kind of is a problem mixed with his low motor and seemingly Jay Cutler-esque attitude. So I think with Jacoby Brissett, this team can be fine, maybe a little bit more competitive, but Cardinals fans, don't get your hopes up because this guy, I have to remind people this every time I talk about Jacoby Brissett, threw a check down in the end zone that led to a safety. You're still not in good hands.
Sorry, Griffin, who tuned into the show earlier. Sorry, Griffin. Bad time to be a Cardinals fan. And then let's talk about Chargers and Dolphins. I believe you picked the Dolphins in this game. I picked the Chargers, but it doesn't matter. I feel like both teams lost. Chargers, they came back and rallied, but they were down quite a bit in this game. Devon Achane has a huge game, but I think the standout player in this game, I mentioned him in the worst top 5, but Kamani Vidal, he is a 6th-round pick from last year and rushes 7 yards a carry in this game. Ladd McConkey wakes up as well. Keenan Allen gets banged up a little bit here, but I think the story goes to him. I mean, he stands in after Marion Hampton goes down. You already lose Najee Harris earlier this year. You have your 3rd-string running back, Kamani Vidal. Is this more of a pedigree to how bad the Dolphins' defense is, or is this guy just like a good fill pickup for the Chargers because he played well, and maybe he continues on next week?
I think both can be true. I think he can continue to be effective with the Chargers because the Chargers under Jim Harbaugh have a good run scheme. He's always been good at designing run plays to make it easy for the running back, and he had those years under Frank Gore he was able to engineer with the 49ers. So I think both of those can be true, but when you have a defense that is going up against a team with 4 starters on their offensive line who are injured, both of those being a left and a right tackle, and you can't get to the quarterback and you let them score in like 30 seconds at the end of the game to get a field goal and end up losing. I think that's a big problem with your defense. If you can't stop the Chargers, I mean, God bless Ladd McConkey, but you almost tackle Justin Herbert, and then Ladd McConkey is wide open, and he runs it all the way down to the 20-yard line on you. Like, really? Like, this Dolphins team is just pathetic. And then you have Tua complaining after the game, blaming everybody but Tua. It's like, we have players on this team who aren't showing up to players-only meetings, or they're showing up late. And then he's the starting quarterback, supposed to be the franchise quarterback, and it's everyone's fault but his. Like, it's everyone's fault but Tua's. Like, and this team does look a little bit better without Tyreek Hill, and I think him not being on the field, I think Tyreek Hill, he was a little bit washed and then it was a little bit dramatic, especially in the locker room where it would take targets off Jalen Waddle. But like, the bright side for this team is Jalen Waddle looking like himself again. But overall, I think this team is just a disaster, and they're going to be in the running for probably 3rd, 4th worst team this year. And Brian Callahan got fired this week, but Mike McDaniels might not be too far behind. I give it till week 9 or 10.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Tua's press game conference not great. His 2nd in interceptions in this game, or in the league so far. They haven't looked good. They get blown up by the Colts in week 1. They look bad against the Patriots. They look bad against the Bills. Jets game, who cares? The Jets are winless. And like they've played more competitively over the last 2 weeks since without Tyreek Hill. But at the same time, like this team is a mess. Mike McDaniels does not look like there's a clear direction. Their defense is abysmal, worst defense in the NFL at this point, outside of maybe the Ravens. And then outside of that, like you're relying on Jalen Waddle, who has proven to be solid, but otherwise, like we're bringing back Darren Waller. Darren Waller, who's been retired for a year, turned country star, turned back to tight end, transformer that is Darren Waller. Like, how am I supposed to believe in this Dolphins team at this point? The only thing that is holding them up right now is the play of Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle, but it's not Tua at this point. Tua has not looked good at all this season, and outside of that, like the receivers suck, their defense sucks, and their coach is definitely going to be fired. And I think he's well aware that he's going to be fired too, because he's not acting like a coach who's trying to save his job. He's treating himself as like, okay, my fate here is already cemented at this point.
Yeah, I don't understand like the Mike McDaniel bros either, because do you remember all the like people that came out and they're like, I love Mike McDaniels. I think he's a really good head coach and a really great guy, but his like whole aura was just negative. Like he had the aura of logic, more like it.
Yeah, maybe he's a good like offensive coordinator. Like I could probably see him be a fine offensive coordinator somewhere. But as like a head coach has to carry this type of swagger or even more like just like a dominating demeanor. That's why we see like Mike Vrabel be successful, or you have to have a certain swagger about you like Sean McVay might have. But he doesn't have either. Like he just kind of has like a guy who's a good quarterbacks coach, which is kind of where he came from. He's better to be maybe as one of the coaches, but as the coach who's calling all the shots, who's leading the offense and the defense and motivating guys to be ready for war out there on the field. He's not the guy for that. And it's unfortunate. I like Mike McDaniels the guy, but as the coach, he's not a good coach.
Yeah. And then the whole cold weather record thing that's out there, but it's like you can't win games when it's below 50 degrees, and then you can't win playoff. And well, I mean, you're going to play probably the Bills or the Chiefs in the playoffs at some point in Buffalo or Kansas City, because you're definitely not going to win your division. So it's like that essentially rules out any success you're going to have in the playoffs. So I just don't think he's really a guy that can get his team through adversity, because while Devon Achane is playing well right now, no matter how bad Tua does play, Devon Achane is only good when Tua plays.
Yeah, that is true. And then I look at the rest of their schedule, right? Next week they face the Browns. Could be below 50 degrees in that game. They face the Ravens in
In
Baltimore.
Cleveland?
In Cleveland, yes.
Oh,
And then
Miles Garrett's mad too.
yeah. And then later on, right, we have the Ravens in November. That's not going to be pretty. Buffalo in November. That's not going to be pretty. Washington in November. That's going to get cold. The Saints might be warm. But like we have the Jets in December, the Steelers in December, the Bengals, and like it's just going to get ugly for them, unfortunately. And it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And I think I'm going to guess probably this Falcons game on the 26th. That's probably the last we see of Mike McDaniels as the coach, especially if they're 1-7 by then.
Yeah, so tough for the Dolphins. And then the Chargers, does this kind of just feel like a team that might just kind of fade out of the regular season and not make the playoffs? Or do you think they still have a shot?
I think they have a shot, but I don't think they win their division. I mean, they're currently in the lead for the division, but between their injuries and everything else, Herbert not playing like he did the first couple of weeks of the season, I think this team just has so many injuries. I think they're a good team overall with a normal full strength team, but the fact that your entire offensive line has been eviscerated, and not only that, your running backs have been eviscerated, your receivers are getting hurt. Like this team is just every year there's a team that gets the injury bug. Usually the last few years it's been the Niners. This year it's the Chargers, and I just don't think they're going to be able to overcome it. Maybe they're like 9-8, 10-7, but it's going to be hard to scrap wins together, especially when it gets to December.
Hmm.
But speaking of teams that can't scrap wins together, Browns and Steelers. The Browns. Dylan Gabriel has 4 completions over 10 yards. Aaron Rodgers plays well in this game. And then just felt like, for me, not a whole lot to say about this game overall, but just felt like a classic Steelers versus Browns matchup. Tough defensive battle, but the Steelers just have the edge. I don't really have too much to say about this game otherwise.
Yeah, it was kind of just cool seeing Aaron Rodgers go out there and look good. I mean, 21 for 30, played an efficient game. He didn't really have to do too much. Jalen Warren now being the sole back looks good, but like the Steelers, one thing I noticed is they have three really solid tight ends. They're pretty big up front. So this looks like a team that could like actually have some muscle to protect Aaron Rodgers. And then you have a player like DK who can really just blow the whole game open. So it's going to be a team where I actually think they built the right offense around Aaron Rodgers. Where if he has like one go-to guy and a solid running game and some protection in the playoffs, like, all right, I think the Steelers might actually win their division. And I think this game reaffirmed that. There's not really going to be anyone healthy enough to win the division unless the Ravens come back. But even if Lamar does come back, do you really believe in the Ravens defense?
No, I don't. So I think and I'm looking at the rest of their schedule. Like they face the Bengals on Thursday night, which we're going to cover later in the show. Make sure to tune in for that. But their schedule gets pretty easy afterwards. So I think they're going to be solid. And I think Aaron Rodgers showed to be that the issue the last 2 years was the Jets, and them being 0-6 also cements that for us. But yeah, I agree. I think the Steelers. I don't trust the Bengals. I certainly don't trust the Browns, and the Ravens are a mess already. So the Steelers, it's their division to lose at this point.
I have a question for you though. Like, what do you think of Kevin Stefanski right now? Like, just looking at his like whole tenure with the Browns, he went through the whole Baker Mayfield thing, kind of Deshaun Watson where he's at right now. Do you think he deserves some of the blame for this? And this is his last year. Do you think he's just going to be one of those guys where the Browns organization is so bad that they don't want to risk firing him because maybe who else do we think we can get where we may have to go after someone like Aaron Glenn or Brandon Staley, Matt Eberflus around 4?
I think Kevin Stefanski overall is a good head coach. I think Cleveland, I mean, it's hard to win games when your quarterback is a rookie quarterback who was a fourth round pick. And then before that, like you had the Joe Flacco's of the world, who's definitely beyond his years at this point. But a lot of I mean, I don't know how much say he has in their organizational decisions, but he also was in their ear saying, let's move on from Baker. Baker's not going to work out. Look at what Baker's done with Tampa since then. And then some of their other decisions, right? I think he is going to be a guy that they fall on. I think he is going to be fired. I think he's a guy that could be successful in his second stint because he's been, I mean, for Brown standards, been fairly successful for them. I think he's got 2 playoff appearances, but I do think that part of the blame does have to go towards him, especially because he is an offensive-minded head coach, and they've had one of the worst offenses the last several years since they've broken up with Baker.
Yeah, the best coach right now for them is Jim Schwartz, who would probably take over if they fired him.
Yeah, and Jim Schwartz, he deserves an opportunity. But I think Kevin Stefanski, like maybe he replaces Mike McDaniels in Miami. I think that he could be successful there. They move on from Tua, but I do think that he's a good head coach. But I think this situation is it's going to be a hard one for him to overcome.
Mm.
But we move on to one of the best games of the week, actually. A game that I didn't have super high expectations for, but Cowboys and Panthers. We have yet another Rico Doidle masterclass, and he becomes the first running back since Le'Veon Bell to have 230 scrimmage yards in back-to-back games. Where were you in the Linsanity run of Rico Doidle in 2025? I don't know where this came from.
I was
because the revenge game, like first of all, he had this game against the Dolphins. All right, it's the Dolphins defense, and the Cowboys defense is not great either. But 236 scrimmage yards against your former team, runs all over them, has more rushing yards and more scrimmage yards than Dak Prescott through most of the game. Like, absolute master. Rico Doidle, circle his name, put him on the calendar, give him whatever awards you can, because this Linsanity run for Rico Doidle is one for the books, to be honest.
Yeah, and it was where were you when Rico Doidle went on his Linsanity run? I was live on air predicting it. I was like, right after that game, like if Rico Doidle is gonna go off like this, and the Panthers are gonna get a win, albeit against the Miami Dolphins, I definitely think they can do it against the Cowboys, especially since D Swift ravaged that defense. The Cowboys have shown that they really don't have a great defense at this point, and I picked the Panthers in an upset. I said Rico Doudle is going to have a revenge game. Called the revenge game with Stephon Diggs. And now we come out here, predict the revenge game with Rico Dowdle. And this is a Panthers team that they just are gonna compete against some of the most mid teams in the NFL, but make it a really entertaining game. And this game was just a lot of fun. You have the Panthers coming back in this game, and it's another game where Bryce Young kind of has to lead them down the field at the end of the game. He's able to get it done. We have Tedero and McMillan not getting one of his first touchdowns, but he gets his second touchdown. Xavier Legette has been a pretty surprising, decent receiver for them. And then for the Cowboys, just didn't have a defense in this game. But I will say, I like George Pickens. I liked him with the Steelers because I'm a Steelers fan, but just seeing him be this good, I mean, this guy had to go through the post Ben Roethlisberger Steelers quarterback room where he had Mason Rudolph at certain points. He had Kenny Pickett that didn't even realize his job as a quarterback was to get his receivers the ball in the end zone. He thought his job was to impersonate Morgan Wallen at night on the weekend in Pittsburgh. But he had to deal with that. Then he had to deal with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And for all the grief we give Dak on the show, we just give him grief because, well, he is a really good quarterback. Is he a guy you should pay top dollar franchise quarterback money to? Personally, no. I think he's kind of outside the top 10, but he's still a really good NFL quarterback. And when you have someone that good, I mean, say what you will about Dak, he knows how to get his guys the ball. And at points, George Pickens has looked even better than CeeDee Lamb at some point because it looks like he has the athleticism of Justin Jefferson, the hands of Justin Jefferson, and then some of just the absolute speed of some of the best receivers in the league, where now he looks like he could potentially win a triple crown if they keep up this pace.
Yeah, George Pickens in this game, almost 200 receiving yards in this game. Ever since CeeDee Lamb went down, he's been the de facto number one, and he has been electric for him. I will give a shout out to Dak Prescott because he's second in passing yards and second in touchdowns. He's played really well this year. Their offense is really good. Their defense, not so much. But they're a fun team to watch. I'll give credit to the Cowboys. We understand the Micah Parsons trade was tough to make, but you've made George Pickens look like an absolute superstar. And I always thought he was going to be a superstar in Pittsburgh. I was confused why they traded him last year, but there were some risks with Mike Tomlin. That's fine. Now he's in Dallas. He's been great. I also want to shout out Jake Ferguson because Jake Ferguson has been a touchdown machine this year in Dallas as well. What scares me for this team is when CeeDee Lamb returns. Now you have the rapport with George Pickens. You have the rapport with Jake Ferguson, and you add CeeDee Lamb to the mix. Like, this offense is going to be averaging 30 points a game at this point. And if Javonte Williams can turn it up like he did in September, this offense is going to be top 5 offense in the league potentially. So even though their defense sucks, they might actually still win games because of it. And they, just like we mentioned with the Giants, could still be in contention for the division at this point. So I like this. The Cowboys team, they might not be the best team, but they are a fun team to watch. I circled them on my calendar because every game that they've had so far has been cinema, to be honest.
Yeah, honestly, this season's the most I've enjoyed watching Dak, to be honest. Like before, I've never been a Dak fan. I've been like kind of Dak hater curious over the past, but I'm not like a full hater of Dak Prescott. But this season, I feel like is the best I've seen Dak Prescott look. Like I think he actually got better this year. I think he's matured a little bit, and then I think he's just overall seeing the field better than he has before. And then he knows how to get the balls to his guys. So I think if you add CeeDee Lamb to the mix of this, this team could easily average 35 points in their sleep. But yeah, looks like we lost Brick there, or he's frozen. But yeah, let me know what you think about the Dallas Cowboys there. But definitely a good game. One of my favorite games of the year so far. You always have these games. Looks like he is back. You back now?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what happened there. We were talking too nice about Dak, and the internet told me to silence myself. So that's unfortunate. But we were talking about George Pickens, the CeeDee Lamb, the Dak Prescott that we like to enjoy on the show this year. So I like what I've seen from the Cowboys. I like what I've seen from the Panthers as well. Kind of right about the Panthers so far. they've been a fun team.
Yeah.
Not a great team, but a fun team to watch.
I think I've called all their games pretty spot on this year so far. I've kind of been a Panthers whisperer per se. I don't know. Like I've
Yeah.
called a lot of their upsets, called their upset against Miami, called it this week against the Cowboys, some of their losses. So I think we have a pretty good tab on the Panthers this year.
I would agree. Team that I don't have a good tab on because I don't know what team I'm getting each week. How about Jags and Seahawks? The Jaguars, they are 4-2. And, we give some grace to Liam Cohen for that because his press conference was a nightmare. But they are a relatively competitive team. But in this game, yes, the score reads 20-12, but I felt like the Seahawks the entire game just kind of dominated the Jaguars. What was your thought on the Jags and Seahawks game?
Yeah, this was a game I thought the Seahawks would win. Honestly, the Jaguars I thought were just due for a down to earth game, especially when you have a good Monday Night Football game against the Kansas City Chiefs, coming to turn around against the Seattle Seahawks, who have been humming at a pretty good clip throughout the NFL season. I thought it would make sense that we'd get a kind of game like this. But I was disappointed because the Jaguars got every single stop that they needed to against the Seattle Seahawks. At the end of the game, it was until they had the blown coverage on their tight end, and then he went down the field wide open for the Seattle Seahawks on the last drive. But pretty much every other drive, the Jaguars did enough to get Trevor Lawrence the ball, and then the Jaguars just did nothing with it. So is that a credit to the Seattle Seahawks defense, or is that just like the Jaguars just could not get it done? They couldn't find a rhythm, and that's kind of what I've been talking about this team, where it's just kind of frantic and it's a little bit clunky. And you had a chance to go down the field, win this game, not like once, not twice, but I counted 4 stops against the Seattle Seahawks where you would have had a chance to drive down the field, get a touchdown and 2 points, and then potentially win this game in overtime. So I was just
Yeah.
disappointed that the Jaguars couldn't do anything with it.
I guess the one saving grace from this game, though, is BTJ has struggled a lot so far this year. In this game, finally kind of breaks out. I expect him to continue to break out moving forward. Um, that was my big takeaway for the Jags because he's definitely struggled so far. I do also want to apologize to JSN because early on in the season I didn't believe in him as a number one, but he has proved me
Mm-hmm.
wrong every single week since then. So clearly I don't know ball. Someone roast me in the comments, but he's been elite. I believe he's top 5 in receiving yards, if I'm not mistaken. He's been elite. Yeah, he's top 5 in receiving yards. Actually, no, he's number 1 in receiving yards. So he's been electric. So I was clearly wrong about JSN. I believed in him as a good receiver, but I didn't realize he was going to be this electric as a number 1. So credits to him.
Kind of in
In that.
Seattle, because I don't think like anyone really knew what to expect from the Seattle Seahawks. I don't expect too much from them in the playoffs, but I think this is a team that can definitely win their division, especially if Puka Nacua is going to struggle with staying on the field, and the Niners are going to lose everyone. So
Yeah, which actually is a good pivot to the Rams game because this was an ugly game all around for probably, I would say, both teams, but 17-3, more of a defensive battle for the Rams, but they get the win. They hold the Ravens to 3 points. More or less just kind of had a second half resurgence for them, but Puka Nacua gets banged up in this game. We don't know the status of him. Will he return? How long he may be out for? And then for the Ravens, I mentioned it in the worst top 5. Not one, not two, not three, 4 times they're on the 1 yard line to score a touchdown, and they get stopped by the Rams. I don't know if that's credit to Jared Verse and the boys up front for the Rams, or that the Ravens are just that bad this year. I think I'm leaning it towards them being that bad this year. I understand that Lamar is out and they're struggling there, but this Ravens team, like they're out. They're done. They're cooked at this point. They have to be, surely. They're 1-5. Like they're not coming back from this.
yeah, because their defense has been bad. You can have a lot of injuries there. Lamar has a hamstring injury, so he may be on and off the field. So you have to think about really how many more elite years you're going to get from Lamar Jackson, because players who play his style of football, we've seen burn out a little bit quicker. So is it going to be 5 more years with Lamar Jackson, or do we have maybe another 2 or 3 year window? If so, we have to really think about what we're doing on offense because they just made a lot of dumb calls on the goal line. Tom Brady was calling this game, and he's like, I don't know why we're trying to run the tush push when you have Derrick Henry. You could just turn around and give him the ball because he is one of the best running backs in the league, especially punching it in. Why wouldn't you also run that play with Derrick Henry and then you reverse it and you have Mark Andrews pushing him from behind with a fullback or another player? So it really just didn't make sense that they were trying to run the tush push with Mark Andrews instead of just giving Derrick Henry the ball 4 times. I think would be a lot better. So I think like the Ravens were kind of just dumb in this game, and then the Rams, it just felt like, okay, yeah, we're gonna win this game. Maybe it'll be ugly, but it's just hard to care, especially when Puka goes down. Then you're thinking about that. He ends up coming back and playing and finishing out the game, but it just seemed like the Rams could not care less about this game, especially in Baltimore. You just want to get out with the W. So do I fault it for being an ugly game? Like, no, it's all right. You'll make it to
Yeah.
November.
Yeah, you'll make it to November. I agree. But yeah, my thing with this game is like the Ravens, obviously it's been a tough season for them so far, but do you think that this is a season that could cost John Harbaugh his job potentially? Because he's been with them for almost 20 years now. He started in '08 with them, and they've had several blown leads. They've had several short moments in the playoffs, whether it was Flacco or with Lamar. And this is an opportunity where they could right a new ship potentially and get a new head coach. Maybe someone like Kevin Stefanski, if he is available this offseason, moving on, having a fresher face in the locker room potentially. But do you think that, I mean, a lot of this has to do with Lamar being down, but do you think that this is a potential season where we see John Harbaugh potentially move on and go on to greater pastures potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I've only been talking about John Harbaugh on the show for the past 3 years. I mean, you look at this guy's track record in the playoffs outside of having one of the best defenses in the 2010s, where you pretty much have Ray Lewis and Ed Reed coaching that team. You have Terrell Suggs, one of the best defenses in the league, but you have Lamar Jackson, and then you lose a game to the Buffalo Bills in the divisional round. Okay, no big deal. You can't figure out the Chargers playing a base 8 defense where they play 8 corners on the field, and then you can't figure that out. And then you've lost to the Chiefs not once, but not twice now in the playoffs where you've gotten to it. And then you had a home game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and you abandoned every single thing that made your offense good in the regular season. If you just kind of played how you normally played throughout the year, you had a real chance to actually beat and upset the Chiefs at home when you were playing them, and the Chiefs offense was struggling. All you needed to do was just run the ball, play like you have played all year, and I think you probably could have won that game. So I think John Harbaugh has been kind of expired as an NFL head coach in Baltimore probably for the last 3 years at best at this point, but I would have let him go about probably the third meltdown that he had with Lamar Jackson. I think if you have 3 playoff runs with the MVP caliber quarterback and you can't get it done and you're not consistently in the conference championship, it's time for you to go. And then you also lost that game to the Buffalo Bills last year.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily close either. So I think I agree. I think it's time for a change in Baltimore. Let's move on from John Harbaugh. Let's find the new face that can maybe right the ship and win playoff games with Lamar. Because Lamar, like you mentioned, he is, I believe, now 28 now. So for someone like him, like we saw Cam Newton after 32 not be the same player. And Lamar, he has had his injuries already. He's been at the top of his game for the last 8 years now. I mean, he came into the league in 2018. He's been a starter. He won his first MVP in 2019. So that's 6 years ago. And if you look for someone like him, 10-year peak is typically what we see from him. I think if you're going to have a year, especially with him and Derrick Henry at the peak of their powers, you need to try everything. And I think a new head coach could potentially right the ship for them and maybe get them over the hump potentially.
Yeah, and like John Harbaugh's also a special teams coordinator. Like, come on, guys, it's time to grow up and hire an offensive coordinator for your head coach.
100%. Speaking of teams that are looking for coaches, this was the last we saw of Brian Callahan. He was fired after this game. Raiders beat the Titans 20-10. Geno Smith played fairly well for Geno Smith standards, did still throw his annual interception. Ashton Genty still struggling a little bit with them, but Raiders, they get the win. And the Titans, it looks hard for them right now. I feel for Cam Ward. I feel like his receiver core has a lot to be desired, a lot of drops, the most dropped receiver room in all of the NFL. I feel for Cam Ward. But yeah, bye-bye Brian Callahan. He is gone. He is unemployed.
Yeah, and I don't know. Does this seem fair? Like, to me, it just seemed like the Titans were like, I don't know. We got to do something. And clearly, Brian Callahan is not working. And he was one of those surprise hires as offensive head coach, because Joe Burrow was the quarterback there. Zach Taylor was the offensive coordinator. Then you have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. How much does Brian Callahan really do around here? So he was someone I was always a little bit skeptical being hired as a head coach. It just seemed like that corny, oh, he's young, offensive coordinator, worked with Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. Why don't we try that and take a stab in the dark at it? So to me, it just felt like, well, we got to try something. And if we're bad, we can't be this bad. And I don't know, at some point, if your receivers are dropping passes like that, does it come down to coaching? Is that on the head coach?
Yeah, I mean, they played a little sloppy. They had 3 turnovers. Their offense has been lousy, and that's his specialty. So I get it to some extent, but I also don't think that you gave him 2 years, right? Last year they struggled. They're 3-14. This year they start off 1-5. But what was your expectations for the Titans? Because my expectations for the Titans was okay, first half they're probably going to struggle, but maybe second half they get some momentum. And now you have a guy who is 6 games in his career, and now he has a new head coach already. And he's probably going to have a new head coach next year because their interim head coach is most likely not to be the guy moving forward. So he's going to have 3 head coaches in 1 year for a first-round quarterback. I just don't think you're setting Cam Ward up for success. If you wanted to be successful for him, why didn't you go out and try to get a receiver in the offseason? You got Tyler Lockett, but Tyler Lockett is how old at this point? And then your running game leaves a lot to be desired. Your offensive line is not great, and your defense is still definitely in rebuild as well. What did you expect from Brian Callahan? What was he supposed to do? Was he supposed to win 5 of his first 6 games? I don't think you really set him up for success here. You knew he was in a rebuild, and granted, they did struggle last year and then into this year, but I also don't think they had the team to compete. So what were they really supposed to do?
Yeah, hell, man. Hugh Jackson got 2 seasons. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Hugh Jackson got
Hugh
2
Jackson
seasons.
also went 0-17.
Yeah.
He also went winless and oh no, we'll be better next time. No, he had 2 seasons where he won 1 game combined, and they're no, we'll bring him back. So maybe that speaks to the Browns and not the Titans, but still, I don't know. Give him a full 2 seasons. Why did you bring him back if he wasn't the guy? I don't know. You let him pick your quarterback, but now your quarterback is going to have 3 head coaches in 1 year. That's just, you're not setting your guy up for success there.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the Titans too is I think Mike Vrabel going to New England to be the heir was always the plan. So I think the Titans are kind of just in a bad situation because it was just time for Mike Vrabel to leave. And I think he wanted to go to New England away from Tennessee to rebuild with them once they got the right guy, where he'd sit it out for a year and have Gerard Mayo be the sacrificial lamb. Did you think you were going to get someone like Mike Vrabel, and Brian Callahan? At least let him finish out the second year and don't put Cam Ward through his first head coach getting fired in the middle of the season. You're already trying to nuke his career as the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, I just think it sets a bad precedent. I don't have a lot to say about the Raiders in this game. Good for you for beating one of the worst teams in the league, I suppose. But Titans, it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out, because I just don't think you're setting Cam Ward up for success there. Then we move to the Packers and Bengals game. Massive spread to enter the game, plus 14 for the Packers. But the Bengals, they've been worst top 5 consistently over the last several weeks. They graduated because they didn't play as bad as I expected them to. They had a decent second half, got a little bit competitive at the end. In this game, it felt like for me the Packers weren't really trying. I feel like they were just kind of lackadaisical in this game. Josh Jacobs has a big game. We're starting to see Matthew Golden get utilized in this game a little bit more. Jamar Chase has woken up. But overall, like Packers, I just didn't really feel like they were as like they could have definitely dominated this team a lot more. But I will say the addition of Joe Flacco does make this team a little bit more exciting. I don't think he's going to rock your world, but their offense moved a little bit better in this game. They still had their moments, but what was your thoughts on this Packers-Bengals game?
Yeah, like Joe Flacco comes in as like a old like washed up quarterback and he puts up 18 points and looks a lot better than Jake Browning did. So I think gives the Bengals a little bit of hope because you still did manage to get 2 wins in September. So if Joe Flacco can go out there and win you a couple games to stay afloat in December, I think that'd be good because I could definitely see the Steelers hitting a wall and having some struggles because that defense, keep in mind, is still old. So this game, like, okay, Joe Flacco actually looks like he can get T. Higgins and Jamar Chase the ball. Also, look at who Joe Flacco had to throw it to in Cleveland, where we have Jerry Jeudy, who's dropping passes for Dylan Gabriel. It's not a great wide receiver room. They haven't had a good wide receiver room in about 2 years for Cleveland, really. And then you don't have someone dominating like Nick Chubb dominated, and then Jerome Ford seems to be more of a one-hit wonder than an actual franchise running back here. So I think weapons-wise, I mean, it improved tremendously for Joe Flacco. So once he gets in a rhythm, I think that they can maybe get a win or two. And then the Packers, they just didn't want to lose to Joe Flacco twice in the same season. So that's pretty much what they were trying to do. Like you already embarrassed them in the Cleveland game, and they were just trying to hold on and make sure that didn't happen again.
Yeah. And so I don't have a lot to say about the Packers. I still think they're one of the best teams in the league. But it would have been funny if Joe Flacco beats them twice, and especially if that's their only 2 losses of the season. I think that would have been funny.
Yeah. And Matt
But
LaFleur's a November, December guy, so
yeah. Then we move to Bucks and Niners. I think now officially everyone has officially anointed Baker as the MVP through the first 6 games. I give you credit here, Mr. St. Arnold here. You had picked him early, and I wasn't even early on Baker Mayfield either. I didn't think he was gonna be as great as he's been so far this season, but he's got 4 fourth quarter drives to win the game for them. This is the first game that they've won that they didn't have to come back and win. So a lot of strength there. But yeah, any thoughts on how the Niners performed in this game? Big game for Kendrick Bourne for those in fantasy. If they started him, Jake Tungus also played a big game. But any thoughts on the Niners in this game, as well as Baker Mayfield, MVP?
I mean, the Niners, you're just watching them slowly sink at this point. I mean, Nick Bosa goes down and then Fred Warner gets hurt now. Like, really? Fred Warner's going to be out for the season. He has to have surgery on a dislocated ankle, I think it was. So that is a huge loss for you. But the Niners, it seems like they've actually drafted pretty well on their defensive line. They have some nice, good young guys on defense. And I think as long as we keep seeing Mac Jones, like, with Kendrick Bourne and George Kittle comes back, I think the Niners will still be a fine competitive team. And I think the Rams and the Seahawks are kind of locked all together for me. And I really don't see that changing too dramatically unless Mac Jones or Christian McCaffrey goes down. But for the Buccaneers, I think the real difference for them in this game was just their defense continues to get better and better each week. It seems like Levante David is really starting to get into game shape now, where he ends up forcing the fumble at the end of that game to win it. And then you have Antoine Winfield Jr., Jamel Dean. Both of them are playing excellent at this point. So I think the real difference in this game for Tampa was their defense, and then Baker Mayfield being the MVP, not just by putting up numbers, but by being able to deal with his top 4 offensive weapons being injured at this point. And then someone else comes in, doesn't miss a beat. He ends up adjusting his own route as a rookie. I think this guy's a 4th-round pick, and then catches a touchdown from Baker Mayfield. And then that helps them ice this game. But as soon as a Booker goes down, someone else gets their first touchdown catch of their career. Then Baker Mayfield is now elevating talent, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just seem like an absolute machine at this point, especially with Baker Mayfield. And they just have what playoff teams need, which it seems like they actually enjoy playing with each other and they play for each other, which I love.
Yeah, I think credits to him. I mean, like you mentioned, Mike Evans is down, Chris Godwin's down, Bucky Irving's down. Everybody's basically injured on their offense, and it doesn't matter. You tap in Tez Johnson. He has a huge touchdown to seal the game. Baker Mayfield with that huge third down conversion as well. I think it was 3rd and 14. Runs it out, gets that play as well. So credit to Baker. I feel like, especially when you have to overcome, it's easy to be successful when you have, the top receiver core and you have a top running back and you have a top offensive line. It's one thing that when you're able to do that, when all these guys are down and you have to overcome that, the fact that he's able to overcome that, plus with all the clutch plays he's had already this season, it's just another reason why Baker should be the MVP at this point, early on in the season. And I think he will be ultimately the way he's going, especially with the story, Baker Mayfield, the chip on his shoulder. So pretty incredible. We have X Specterior. He's asking us here if he should trade Walker for Derrick Henry. What do you think?
Which Walker? Kenneth Walker?
Kenneth Walker, I assume, right?
I mean, Derrick Henry is pretty much all that the Ravens offense have at this point. He's had like some issues, but the problem with the Ravens is they can't get it to the end zone. But he did have like 122 yards last week. So what do you think of that?
I think, I think the Seahawks, they kind of balance between him and Charbonnet, where for the Ravens, like they've invested a lot of money in Derrick Henry, and eventually when Lamar comes back, I think he's still going to be great. He's like their main focal point of their offense at this point. So I think Derrick Henry would be a good addition. And you can probably buy him low. So I think I would take Derrick Henry over Kenneth Walker, although I am a big Kenneth Walker fan.
Kenneth Walker has had some injury issues the past few years where he necessarily hasn't finished every season super strong.
That's true. Let's move to Sunday night game. Chiefs, Lions. We had them as the 1 and 2 best teams according to the Brickyard. Make sure to watch that clip when it comes out later this week. But Chiefs get the win. Patrick Mahomes plays flawlessly in this game. 3 touchdowns, 0 picks, 70% completion rating. And the Chiefs, just when we thought they were dead, they're back. They're 3 and 3, knocking on the doors of the deflated Chargers. And they're just like that. They're back in the playoff race. Who could have possibly bet against them? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think we picked them to go 11-6 this year too. So like they're right on track for that. They're kind of like this season's playing out how I thought, and they had gone. They haven't won a 1 possession game this year. They win this game by more than 2 possessions, and that's really been the difference with this team. But their offense does look a lot more explosive than it ever did last season. Patrick Mahomes is actually creeping up into the top 5 when it comes to passing touchdowns, passing yards right now. He has more total touchdowns and passing yards than Josh Allen, who was Superman in September. So the Chiefs are doing their thing right now, and I think that 0-2 record versus Jared Goff was really weighing on Patrick Mahomes because one of those games was probably, you could argue, the greatest regular season game of all time in Mexico City, where it's 54-51, absolute electric game. And then you also have the Thursday night football game. I think they were coming off a Super Bowl win, and then the Lions beat them 20-17. Which is kind of a tough grind game. So it seemed like the Chiefs really want to get this one done. Patrick Mahomes isn't a guy you're going to just beat 3 times in a row. And he kind of showed that he still has that killer instinct, Michael Jordan type attitude, Tom Brady-esque, where if it's a big game and it's something that's actually important to him, the Chiefs will show up and show out.
Yeah. And what scares me the most is that Rashee Rice is back. So now what their biggest issue was previously is now done. They now have Rashee Rice. They still have Juju Smith-Schuster, who they're utilizing. Xavier Worthy, they still have as an option. Like their weapons now officially go from solid to now they're good. Like they have Rashee Rice. Travis Kelce played well in this game. Like they're going to be fine. They're going to rattle off wins and they're going to win their division again for the 10th consecutive season.
Hollywood too. I mean, Hollywood Brown was injured last season, and I think Hollywood Brown can actually still be a really good NFL player for them. So if you're going to have Rashee Rice, who wasn't in the Super Bowl for them last year, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, someone like Rashee Rice coming back just makes each of those players that much better because he just opens up the field for everyone else and he gives Mahomes a legit threat where the defense has to think about him, double cover him. That's going to open up a lot of explosive plays for this team and maybe the run game, hopefully, because Pacheco, I mean, he looked a little bit better, but like him and Kareem Hunt, that's really my only trepidation with the Chiefs. Like, do we have a real run game yet?
Not yet. Yeah, that's what I agree. Then we go to Monday Night Football. Let's talk about Falcons Bills first because the Bills in September, they're 4-0. They look like the juggernaut. They look like they're going to be the team to beat in the AFC. Then the Patriots come and take their crown. They beat them last week. And then in come the Falcons, who take the game plan from the Patriots and use it against the Bills again. And the Bills had no response for that. James Cook, fairly contained in this game. Josh Allen has not one but 2 interceptions in this game. Does not look himself. And now the Bills are looking up at the division lead rather than what they saw just 2 weeks ago. The NFL can be really cruel. We talked about over the last 5 years, the Bills have owned that division. But now the Patriots ascending into their team with Drake May and Mike Vrabel. And the Bills, they look like they might have lost their window potentially. What are your thoughts on this game so far with the Falcons and the Bills? Do you feel like the Falcons stole some of that Patriots template? And are the Bills done? Is it over?
Yeah, I mean, this game was tough because I thought it would make sense that the Falcons could win this game because they have a good run game with Bijan Robinson. The Bills have struggled against the run this year. I'm like, I can't, in my mind, pick the Bills to lose 2 games in a row. But the fact that on Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football, back-to-back primetime games, you end up losing, and then you can't stop the run. And then I think you said this when we previewed the Bills this season, but it's like, yes, the Bills brought back anyone and didn't sign anyone else. That seems like a great strategy. And this was the team that was picked by Vegas to go undefeated. And I got to be honest, I kind of feel like Stephen A. Smith right now when the Cowboys suck way too early, because as someone who is the Bills' #1, maybe hater, maybe someone who's correct about the Bills at every step of the way, it kind of makes me sad that I didn't see them being this bad coming this early, especially that teams are just getting a read on James Cook. And honestly, this is the Bills team I thought we were going to get last year, and they've had a lot of injuries on defense. They lost another key player last night. Like, if you can stop the run game and run the ball against the Bills and contain Khalil Shakur, you have a pretty good shot against beating the Buffalo Bills. Because when I looked at this team last season, I don't think they should have like this wildly explosive offense. And people kind of get it now with what they're doing. And you have back-to-back games now where teams have taken the blueprint of what happened. And then if you're a Bills fan, you have to be sick right now just looking up and seeing the Patriots at the top of the division again. How does that not give you PTSD? I mean, really, you draft Josh Allen. Josh Allen kind of sucks in year 1, gets better in year 2, and then he becomes a superstar in year 3. So you're looking at a window from about 2019 to 2025 where you're on top of the division. And now the Patriots are already back on top, and they beat you on primetime, and you lost back-to-back games on primetime, which I think is a huge deal. And what the hell is up with Sean McDermott wearing glasses on the sideline? I don't know if you noticed that, but
Negative aura. I did notice that. Negative aura. No, if I'm the Bills fans, I am disgusted because the Patriots, like, they just had a 20-year dominance with Brady. They have a shortfall. Like, they have a relatively tough year with Cam Newton. They're competitive with Mac Jones for a year, and then they fade in. They're 2 back-to-back 4-13 seasons, and then they get their head coach, they get their quarterback immediately, and now the Patriots are a threat again. And with the way the Bills' schedule looks like compared to that of the Patriots, like, they're not getting that back. Like, this is the Patriots have the easiest schedule the next 8 weeks, whereas the Bills, let's just look at their schedule. They have a bye week next week, but they have the Panthers, and then it's the Chiefs again, who they have struggled with.
Is that in Carolina or in Buffalo?
It's in Carolina. And then they face Tampa in November. They got the Texans to deal with. The Texans' defense is still by any means a tough out. The Steelers, another tough out there. Face the Patriots again in December in Foxborough. and then you face the Eagles at the end of the season. So you have losses on your schedule, whereas the Patriots are facing the Browns and they're facing the Titans and they're facing all these other last place teams. They just lost their division. The division's over. The race has been won. The Patriots have won the division at this point. And
especially with
part
how
of it,
injured their defense is.
no, not even just how injured their defense is, how bad their division. Like their defense sucks. Their defense sucked last year. I mean, week 1 they gave up 40 points to Lamar Jackson. Like, what are we talking about? This elite Bills defense. The Bills haven't had an elite defense in 3 years. What are we talking about? They lost the Jordan Poyers of the world. They lost the Matt Milano, not the same player that he was. Like, the Bills defense is not good. Let's not act like the Bills defense is this juggernaut. I get that you signed Joey Bosa 5 years too late, but like that doesn't make your team great overnight. Like, this Bills defense sucks. You gave up 210 rushing yards. And I know Bijan Robinson is that guy. Trust me, I faced him in fantasy. I know well aware how good he is. But like the Bills defense sucks. And then when your offense also struggles and you're giving the defense more opportunities to suck, who would have thought they would have lost this game? 2 turnovers. And then the Falcons, I mean, credit to Michael Penix. He played well. Definitely credit to Bijan Robinson. That run was amazing, the 81-yard run. But yeah, I mean, this is over. They're going to be a wild card team now. They're going to go probably into New England, and they don't know if they win that game. This might be their window. Their window might be closing at this point.
Yeah, and it's tough because like with this Bills team, like, do you kind of get how I feel? Where I just feel like Stephen A. Where when the Cowboys like are just bad way too soon. Like you're kind of just
Yeah.
disappointed. Like I want to see them get to the conference championship and lose to the Chiefs again. Like you lose to the same team 5 times in a row, and the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs look the way that they did at home against the Lions gives me hope that the Chiefs are probably going to go out there and beat the Buffalo Bills here. And then you go up against the Panthers, who are good at running the football. The Bucs should have Bucky Irving back, so they'll have success against you. So yeah, I think it'll be a tough year for the Buffalo Bills. I did want to say one thing about the Atlanta Falcons because they remind me of one team very specifically that looked very good at one point, but never quite won their division, never quite got it done in the playoffs. How does Michael Penix and this Atlanta Falcons team not remind you of the Miami Dolphins teams with Mike McDaniel, and you replace Tyreek Hill with Bijan Robinson, and then you replace Jalen Waddle with Drake London? But like Michael Penix to me reminds me a lot of how Tua looked when the Miami Dolphins were really good. I don't know if it's just because he's a lefty, but like just the kind of throws that he makes, it's kind of more accuracy. It's more tough touch over arm strength. He's a little bit more athletic than Tua at least, but I don't know. Kind of reminds me of those Miami Dolphins teams when they were peaking the past 2 or 3 years.
I see it. That's actually a really good comp, to be honest. I will say Bijan is a lot better than Devon Achane in that situation, but Bijan's the focal point of that offense. Drake London's a beast in that game. But yeah, I mean, they have to compete with the Bucs, and the Bucs are much better. I'm curious if they're going to have the same ailment that they had, where they can't face anybody in the cold. I guess we're going to see when they face the Jets in November and the Patriots in November. But yeah, I actually do like that comp a lot. I think Michael Penix could be better than Tua, though. But it's a very fair comp to say, especially because his stats kind of resemble that of Tua to some extent. So that's a good comp. I like that.
I mean, at one point Tua was top 5 in like passing yards, so
That is true. That was the peak of Tua. We have one last game to cover. Bears and Commanders. This game came down to a Jake Moody game-winning field goal. Never thought I was going to say that, both for the Bears or for Jake Moody, but they get the win. And now Caleb Williams played fairly well in this game. D Swift, huge game. We got one of those games for D Swift, 100 yards, and they squeak out a win. Commanders get the win, and then a couple of turnovers from the Commanders. Kind of played more Bears-esque in my mind, but Bears Commanders, what was your thoughts on the second Monday night game?
yeah, Bears fans should be very concerned because if Bears fans have paid attention to D Swift when he was with the Lions or when he was with you last season, if D Swift is the reason why you're winning games and he's showing up and showing out, you should be very worried about how this team is going to look after Thanksgiving. And that's the reality for this team, because what happens when D Swift turns back into D Swift, where we used to call him the part-time running back, where he would have these really good games, but towards the end of the season, this guy always just kind of fizzles out. And I think Caleb Williams does look better. This Bears team is good, but I think Caleb Williams is on a little bit more of a Josh Allen trajectory, where he's going to have a kind of bad rookie year. He'll have a better year 2, and then we're really going to see this guy start to shine in year 3 with Ben Johnson. I do like that this team has gotten better, but the fact that D Swift is the focal point on offense scares me and should scare every Bears fan.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Commanders in this game, definitely not their best. 4 turnovers in this game between Jaden Daniels' interception and the fumbles. Not a great game overall. I feel like the Commanders kind of handed them this win, but I give credit to the Bears. They played clean football in this game. D Swift played well. And then, DJ Moore gets banged up a little bit, goes to the hospital, comes back in this game. But overall, I give credit to the Bears. They're starting to win games. It's been very close. They edged out a win this game and then against the Raiders. So I hope to see them be successful moving forward. I don't know if Caleb Williams is going to be a top 5 quarterback in the league, but I think he's attainable to being like a top 10 quarterback, which I think is a fine place to be. So I give credit to the Bears. And then the Commanders, I'm just kind of sold my stock on them. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not super sold on their running game. The receiver core is banged to shit between Debo and Terry McLaurin. What will they be when they all come back full strength? We don't know. But Commanders, I just think this is just not their year. I think there's a little bit of a sophomore slump. Not necessarily with Jaden Daniels, but I just think more people figured out what the Commanders do well and how to kind of restrict them a little bit.
Yeah, and I think they can overcome that. My concern with Jaden Daniels and this team really is Jaden Daniels putting himself in harm's way, because we've seen this play out how many times now, where young rookie quarterback doesn't have his top receiver, feels like he needs to make a play. Oh, now you're out for the year, struggling with injury. So like, you already got injured this season, and then you start throwing yourself in harm's way right away again. So for me, that's really what would concern me for the Commanders. But I do think when it comes to November and December and we get Terry McLaurin back, this team will be a threat in the NFC. Whether they win their division or not, I don't think that's a lock at this point, because the Giants are now posing a threat.
Yeah, I agree. But we have now recapped all of week 6. We'll dive into week 7, go through all of our games, make our predictions, lock those in. We're in for 2 Monday night games again. So lucky us. I don't know why they keep doing this. Nobody's asking for this whatsoever. But let's dive in to week 7. Any final thoughts on week 6?
Week 6, I feel like my final thoughts would be very careful what you say in September, because October is an entirely different month. Q1, everyone thought it would be a Eagles-Bills Super Bowl. Now it looks like it's going to be a Giants-Patriots Super Bowl. So just think about how fast the narrative can change. That's why I don't freak out about what happens in September or even October with a game like the Rams here and there. You kind of just have to stay the course until November, plot your takes very carefully, and just kind of sit back in the shadows and wait, because 1 minute it's going to be Bills and Eagles in the Super Bowl. Next moment, we're looking at potentially Bucks and Patriots.
Yeah. Without further ado, we'll go into Thursday Night Football and what Joe Flacco is calling the Icy Hot Bowl. We got Steelers-Bengals, the battle of the old men. Steelers are favorited at 5.5 in this game. But Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco, 2 potential Hall of Famers, 1 definitely Hall of Famer. Spread is 5.5 for the Steelers. And in this game, I feel like these games tend to be close. I don't know if I would bet on the spread in this game, but based on what I saw from Joe Flacco, I think this game is going to come down to a field goal. I still like the Steelers to win this game, but I will take the Bengals to cover in this game. I think their offense is going to move a lot better in this game, especially with the Steelers secondary. So expect big games from T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, but I do like the Steelers to pull it out.
I think there's a pattern brewing on Thursday Night Football, and that is teams getting an upset. And I think the Bengals are due for a win. We just saw the Giants come out of nowhere, beat the hell out of the Philadelphia Eagles, who are on top of the division. And then we also saw the 49ers come out of nowhere. Mac Jones out-dueled Matt Stafford. Who would have saw that coming? So I could definitely see Joe Flacco coming out here, him getting in a rhythm with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. The Steelers kind of just being due for the loss at this point because they've had some middling wins, to put it politely. And I think the Bengals, can get it going a little bit with Joe Flacco, especially with how many weapons you do have. Like, I don't think your offense can be this bad for this long forever. So give me the Bengals in the upset here.
I like it. Then, lucky us, we have another London game, but this London game doesn't look as bad as the last. Rams and Jaguars. Rams are favored at 2.5. What is the status of Puka Nacua? We won't know. But Stafford and Lawrence, I will say, I got to look at the Jags record, but something tells me that this game is not what we think it to be. Jags record in London is better than that of America. They're 6-5 in London over the last 11 games, and they just tend to be kind of nails where they are. This game is going to be at Wembley, which they have a 4-5 record in. But the Jags historically are like a 300 win. They're typically a 5-12 team. But when London comes around, they play a different game. And now that London is essentially their home turf, I'm going to take an upset, and I'm going to pick the Jags to beat the Rams. It's in London. It's fluky. It's weird. It's disgusting. I'm probably going to wake up in the third quarter like I did last time. But give me the Jags with the upset.
Yeah, I'll take the Jags too. Rams have been kind of shaky, and that's fine, but the Jaguars are just a different animal in London. I think the Jaguars' defense has actually played pretty well so far this season, so give me the Jags to frantically beat the Rams.
All right. Then we have a revenge game, but not with someone on the field. Patriots and Titans. The revenge of Mike Vrabel. Patriots are coming off 2 straight wins, one against the Saints, one against their bitter rivals. And the Patriots are favored at 7.5. Drake May in the MVP conversation. This is a classic battle. Do you think that with the loss of Brian Callahan that they're going to come out firing, that being the Titans? Or do you think this is a desecration? Because in my mind, I think the Patriots come out. They want to play well for Mike Vrabel. So I think the Patriots cover their spread of 7.5. And I think this is a blowout.
Yeah, I think this is another important game where we'll see the Patriots come out, really play hard for their head coach in this game because of what he had to go through in Tennessee. And I think Tony Pollard will get 1 touchdown for my fantasy team, and the Patriots will get the other 5.
All right. I'm here for it. Then the battle, this game looks like a trap. I'm saying it now. Bears and Saints. Bears are favored at 4.5. And the Saints, look, we talked about the Saints already. They are a good 1-5 team. And with the Bears, they've had 2 straight wins that have come down to the wire. They've scraped out a win against the Raiders and the Commanders. And I think the Bears are due for a loss. And I also think the Saints are due for a win. Give me the Saints here to cover the spread. And I think we see a Saints upset at 1 o'clock. Spencer Rattler's played pretty well for a guy that had low expectations. And so maybe we see Alvin Kamara come alive in this game. Maybe it's Chris Olave, but give me the Saints with an upset in this game.
Yeah, I like the Saints with the upset. I mean, this is a team that has competed with the Bills this season, and I think we'll get a Saints upset, and I think it really opens up the conversation if they do for, was Kellen Moore the right choice for the best young head coach starting out the year, or was it actually Ben Johnson? So the Bears have hired Kellen Moore, and was Ben Johnson overhyped and Kellen Moore undervalued? So I think that would be an interesting conversation that can open up if the Saints complete that. So just for the storyline, I will root for the Saints.
All right, I'm here for it. We both got the Saints upset here. A lot of upsets to start. And in this game, I don't think anybody can be upset because their franchises are already upset. 2 bottom 5 teams, according to the Brickyard. Dolphins, Browns, 1 o'clock.
Oh,
Browns are favorited at 2.5. The battle of Dylan Gabriel and Tua. Boy, is this a football game that will be played on field potentially.
is this in Cleveland?
Yep, it's in Cleveland, and it's 62 degrees, so Dolphins have a chance. But the Dolphins are 0-3 away from Hard Rock Stadium, so they have not played good on the road so far. So I'm not picking again. I'm not picking anybody. Fuck, I don't know. I'll take the Browns, I guess, but who cares? No, nobody. I'm not picking anybody in this game. A tie. I'll take a
Yeah, I
tie.
will take the Browns. A tie. Yeah. A tie is a good
Sure.
it's a good game to use the tie for in this one.
Yeah, who cares? I'm not going to dive into this. We know whoever wins this game still loses in my mind. So both teams will lose in this game. We're going to see both of them fall to 1-6.
They're
Chiefs
both
and
gay.
Raiders. They're both gay. We don't like them. Get them out of here. ICE, we're calling you. Raiders and Chiefs. Chiefs are favored at 12.5, and I think that's an appropriate spread. I'll look at Mahomes' record against the Raiders, but I know it's a very good one. Record against the Raiders. I know they fell to the Raiders. Oh, he's 12-2 against the Raiders. Yeah, I mean, come on. Chiefs.
And one of
Chiefs
those
should
was
win this
like
game.
Derek Carr had to throw for like 500 yards.
And the other game was
that game?
a very and I remember the other game was
And
the
then
fluky
Christmas.
Aiden O'Connell. Yeah, the Aiden O'Connell game on Christmas Day. Like, what the hell
He
are we
didn't
doing?
complete a pass in the second half.
Yeah. So very fluky games that they've won. So yeah, I mean, Chiefs 12.5. Plus, you get the return of Rashee Rice. Like, yeah, this is an obvious one. Unless if there's any other things to say, let's go to Eagles Vikings. This is actually a very good 1:00 slate here. Eagles are favored at 1.5. They've lost 2 straight. Vikings are coming off of a bye. Justin Jefferson, potentially another Carson Wentz sighting. Revenge game potentially for Mr. Wentz himself. Thoughts on this game? I'm kind of torn on this game so far. I like to think that the Eagles are going to overcome. This is in Minnesota.
Yeah, I think Minnesota defensively has the right formula to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. They've been able to turn people over, and I think Jalen Hurts will have some turnovers in this one. He got his interception streak broken last week by the Giants. I think that continues, and the Eagles are just in a weird phase right now where they're kind of going through some discovery, and then Kevin O'Connell off of a bye. Definitely like that for the Vikings coming into it. You survive that London trip, and I think this one you can really come out and play spoiler versus Philadelphia. And what has Philadelphia's weakness been? Their secondary. Justin Jefferson, I don't know. Seems like a pretty good receiver. So I think that Vikings can get the upset.
All right. Vikings upset. 3 consecutive losses for the Eagles, potentially. Last 1:00 slate. I know how this is going. Panthers and Jets. Panthers are favored at 1.5. Jets got their first takeaway last week, but they have a -8 turnover differential. And I just think it's funny to watch Aaron Glenn lose. I'm not an Aaron Glenn hater by any means, but the fact that they are relying so heavily on Christ, and Christ has completely forsaken them in this game. I don't know if they've sinned in their past. I don't know, but something is up in East Rutherford. Panthers are on a roll, and I think they get the win. The Jets fall to 0-7.
Yeah, there's like fluff. There's like Old Testament type. There's New Testament, and then there's just kind of the fluffy like Veggie Tales, and it seems like that's what the Jets are getting. When the Jets to turn around that organization really need some Old Testament type of rule of law to come into that franchise and organization to turn them around. If you're gonna turn around the Jets, that's really the energy that you have to come with, and you specifically were sounding the alarm, and this is a victory lap as a show we need to take, but specifically you, where you're like, hey man, we are Lions fans on this show, and Aaron Glenn, not that good, not very good at all, and the Lions defense was always the problem, and I would come in, point out some blown coverages that the Lions would have, and kind of reinforce that, and this is a take we had, but this is definitely a victory lap for you.
It has to be. I mean, the Lions never had a good defense under the Aaron Glenn regime. Everyone wanted to anoint him as the next head coach. And as soon as I saw he was going to the Jets, I'm like, oh, I know where this is going. Sorry, Sauce Gardner. Sorry, Quinnen Williams. It's going to be a rough slate in the Aaron Glenn era because their defense has been a bottom 5 defense in the league. They've not had any turnovers. It's weird that they remove Robert Saleh and suddenly their defense sucks again. But you have that on top of the Panthers, who have the Hall of Famer Rico Doyle right now. Are you sure you want to run into Rico Doyle in the middle of his Linsanity run? We saw what Jeremy Lin did against Kobe Bryant in his infamous Linsanity run. And now This isn't at Madison Square Garden, but it might as well be. It's in New York, and we get to see another Linsanity run with Rico Doidle against the Jets. So, yeah, I'm taking the Panthers, and yeah, a victory lap for the Brickyard. First of all, the MVP.
Yeah.
Shout out Baker Mayfield, and then shout out for me being right about the Jets. Who would have thought that the worst defensive coordinator in the league that was overhyped because the Lions were winning isn't a good defensive coordinator and not a good head coach. Who would have thought? Now they're going to be 0-7.
Yeah, and it's like also with him with the Tampa game, he was doing heinies on the sideline. They still ended up losing that game. I'm like, really? And then does he actually seem like he's a better head coach than Robert Saleh? Like
No.
Dan Campbell and Robert Saleh, they have physicality, they have intensity, but when Dan Campbell is excited, it's almost like a scary rage of happiness where his like neck veins are popping out and then he's like, "Yeah, man," where Aaron Glenn is like, "Oh my god, we're doing so well, guys." It's like it just doesn't have the same command or intensity.
Very manic, I would say, but not a good manic. Manic as like you're the head coach, you got to relax, sort of thing.
Hugh Jackson with caffeine.
Yes, but 4 o'clock slate rolls around, and we had the privilege of watching the Broncos in London. They have now since returned to the Mile High, and they will be facing on against the red hot New York Giants. And this is a game that if you're a gambling man, keep your eyes on because they are favored at 7.5. That being the Broncos. The Giants, after a big win against the Eagles, after what we've seen with Jackson Dart and Cam Scatteraboo, this is upset alert for me. Broncos, they squeaked out a win, but their offenses looked abysmal, and I think the Giants can still stop this offense. I think this game will be low scoring, but I'm taking the Giants in the upset to beat the Broncos.
Yeah. Also, like the Broncos were just in London. You're coming back home to play a game where the Giants played on Thursday night and are going to have more rest than you. And had time to put on Comedy Central instead of NFL Network. NFL Network got swapped with Comedy Central because I don't know what that game was versus the Jets, but it was a joke. And I think the Giants will be able to capitalize off that, especially like you have to turn around and come back into London. Like I get Sean Payton's elite head coach in October, but it's just a all around recipe for a letdown.
I think if nothing else, the Giants definitely cover. But I like the Giants have more momentum. Broncos, yes, they're 4-2, but I don't think they have that quite the same momentum. So I like the Giants in that game. Speaking of team with momentum, Colts and Chargers in SoFi. Chargers are favored at 1.5. They don't have an offensive line. They don't have a running back. Their receivers are banged up. Colts, they are red hot. I'd like to think at some point the Colts will have some sort of a collapse, but so far that hasn't happened yet. With the way the Chargers are, with the way the Colts have been, I think I have to pick the Colts in this game.
Yeah, and the Colts keep getting. You want to talk about the Jesus Jets, but I feel like the Colts keep getting all of these gifts from God because you play the Titans in week 1, and then you go on a stretch where you play the Raiders, the Cardinals, and then you play the Chargers, who are out two of their top offensive tackles. And the Colts defense has played really well. And you have, I don't know, you're going to have Jonathan Taylor coming in there now. Michael Pittman is coming back off of an off week. He's going to be looking to bounce back. So even if Daniel Jones has an interception or two and a fumble in this game, I think the Colts have been good enough to survive 2 turnovers from Daniel Jones per game, and that's fine for them to win with how good their defense has been, with how good Jonathan Taylor has been here. So I think it's another Colts win, and they're going to be one of those teams that might win their division and then flame out in the playoffs, and people be like, I wonder what happened. You look back against who, like everyone they played this season, you're like, oh, they went through a stretch where they played the 15 worst teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I think they could be like the Vikings last year, but I think that the Vikings were more legitimate. This team, I just I can't wrap my arms around them. Like I feel like a lot of this is coming down to Jonathan Taylor, and honestly, he could be in the MVP conversation right now if you want to have that conversation. But I think right now with the way the Chargers are, like I just think the Chargers, between all their injuries, like I just can't pick them against the Colts. With the way the Colts have played, I got to give respect to the Colts there.
Yeah.
Um, And then we have a very steamy 4 o'clock. This is actually a great 4 o'clock slate, if I'm being honest with you. Between the Broncos and Giants and then Colts and Chargers, we then have Commanders and Cowboys. This is going to be, I mean, the over-under in this game is 55.5. You never see over-unders. 55.5. So, I mean, points will be scored in this game. Anybody in fantasy, start them, please. Commanders are favored at 1.5 in Jerry World. And honestly, I know that their defense sucks, but I like the Cowboys in this game. Commanders, they had a tough loss against the Bears. The Cowboys, you have potentially CeeDee Lamb returning in this game, potentially. Then you have George Pickens on top of Jake Ferguson, on top of Javonte Williams, who's played well for you so far. It's going to be high scoring. It's probably going to be like 40-37, but I like the Cowboys in this game to beat the Commanders.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, but I will go with the Commanders in this one. Scary Terry is slated to return in this one, so they're going to get a little bit of a boost on offense. So he should be back. So you have your top guy there. And then just what Rico Dowdle was able to do to you, I think the Commanders will really be able to get a jump start in this one. And it just seems like Dak Prescott is entering in his Drew Brees post Super Bowl era, where Drew Brees was putting up the most gaudy numbers in the NFL, but they had no defense to speak of, and he was putting up like 40 points every single game and losing. And I think that's gonna be the era that they're gonna be in, because I think the Commanders will be the team that will be able to get a stop in this one. So I'll go with the Commanders, and then also the Cowboys are generally a bad team at home, especially in Jerry World.
They are. Right now, they are 0-1 so far. So they haven't lost yet. But, I mean, yes, they are bad. They are below 500 at Jerry World over the last 5 years. So I respect it. Then this game should be easy to pick. Packers and Cardinals. In Glendale, tickets as low as 118. Whoa, that's high for Cardinals games. Packers are favored at 6.5. I'm going to take the Packers here. I don't want to pick the Cardinals ever again. So, yeah, this should be very easy. Packers should cover, and I like the Packers.
Yeah, I'll take the Packers too, for obvious reasons. But I will say Jacoby Brissett really raising the bar, not just the height in the room, but also the ticket price. I didn't realize Jacoby Brissett moved tickets like that, especially in Arizona.
Big ticket item, Jacoby Brissett. Who would have thought? The quarterback battle that was. So, yeah, Packers win. Great 4 o'clock slate. Much better than last week. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of this 4 o'clock slate, which is rare. And then the Sunday night game is Niners and Falcons. Falcons getting a big win against the Bills last week. This is at Levi's Stadium. The Niners were favored at 2.5. But honestly, with the Niners' injuries, with how banged up they've been, you just lost potentially Fred Warner. You have Nick Bosa, who's banged up, all the receivers that are banged up. And Juwan Jennings no longer on my fantasy team. I'm going to take the Falcons in this game to win this game. I think it's going to be close, but between the Bijan Robinson performances that we've seen with how great Drake London's been for them, I like the Falcons. I think they get the upset.
Yeah, I'll take the Falcons as well. I'm surprising that it'd be an upset in this game, especially like Atlanta's defense is starting to really come into their own, especially their head coach is a defensive specialist. So we should see them start to turn up, and they're able to slow down the Buffalo Bills. And I don't know how long you can expect Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne to play out, because great, you beat the Rams in a close game, your division rival, but you go up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and you put up 19 points. And the San Francisco 49ers looked eerily similar to how the New England Patriots looked with Mac Jones, especially like he had Ramondre Stevenson, who had some pretty good years with them. And the run game really wasn't the issue in New England, but his best receiver was Kendrick Bourne. And Kendrick Bourne played well, but you just don't have enough oomph around him to go up against teams like Atlanta who can actually explode on offense.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think the Niners also, like the way their record's been, like I just think they're due for a little bit of regression just based on their, like you can't lose the players that you've lost and not regress inevitably. So I agree there. Then we have 2 Monday night games. I'm going to get the second Monday night game out of the way because the first game was a lot better. Let's go the 7 o'clock game, the game that's going to be played at 10 o'clock. So a lot of these people are going to be going to Betty Bye when this game is on. But Seahawks Texans, over under of 41.5. Seahawks are favored at 3.5 in this game. And so far, like the Texans, they started off 0-3. They've started to get things together, but I just don't really trust their offense. I think this game will be low scoring, but I think in this game I'm leading Seahawks, just based on the way that they played. They have a lot more oomph entering into this game. Texans don't really have their offensive firepower, so I'll take the Seahawks. What is your thoughts?
I'll go with the Texans in this one. I think Ryans is starting to wake up the defense a little bit. And you had an elite offensive explosion versus the Baltimore Ravens, and that was kind of your second week where your offense started to get it together. I'm starting to see your rookie receiver Haskins start to come alive a little bit. Nico Collins seems like he's getting into game shape, and really the key to beating the Seattle Seahawks has been, can you limit the explosive plays of Jackson Smith and Jigba, maybe force Sam Darnold into some turnovers. I think we're going to get a couple interceptions from Sam Darnold. And the thing, too, is the Jaguars were able to slow down Seattle at the end of the game in the fourth quarter. So I think as long as you can just stop that one big play from JSN to Sam Darnold and try and frustrate him a little bit, I think the Texans will be able to come out and win this game.
All right. So you got Texans, I got Seahawks. And then the big Monday night game, probably game of the week, Bucks and Lions. Munch. Great game. We'll be live for this game. Lions are favored at 5.5. They will be without Brian Branch in this game because he was suspended based on that Monday night last play. But Bucks and Lions, game of the week, 2 top 5 teams according to the Brickyard. I'd like to think like the Bucks have played really great, and I think the Bucks can still definitely win this game. But I do think the Lions come back with the vengeance, and I do think they win this game. It's in Ford Field, and the Lions are great at home. The fans are going to be roaring in this game. It's a primetime game. They just got off of a loss against the Chiefs, and Dan Campbell's record following a loss is pretty good. So I'm going to take the Lions to win this game. I think the Bucks, I don't know if they're due for a loss, but I think this is a worthy opponent to fall to.
Yeah, I like the Lions too. You have a Booker go down next week, which you don't like, and then you're also not going to have Bucky Irving in this game, so you're going to have some opportunities for the Lions to tee off on Baker Mayfield. And then going into Sunday night, Dan Campbell was 12-2 on prime time with the Detroit Lions, which is the best record in the NFL since 2021 when he took over the Detroit Lions. So the Lions are a team that perform on prime time and follow up a loss typically with a great performance. So you just lost on prime time versus the Chiefs. That was kind of a game you were due for. Lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. It's another monkey you kind of want to get off your back, and you have some get back for this team. So I think the Lions will be able to get it done. And then you'll start to see that wide receiver room to feel a little bit thin for Tampa Bay. Not saying they'll get blown out in this game, but it's got to catch up to you at some point.
The Lions have won 11 consecutive games following defeat.
11.
So it will be 12 based on our projection. So we have been covered. But the Lions, coming off a loss, they are 11-0 the last 11 games. So we like the Lions in this game, but we have been previewed. We not only have been recapped for week 6, not only have we figured out who is the top 5 and worst top 5 teams according to the Brickyard, but you've also been recapped and previewed for week 7. So thank us later in the comments, please. And with the likes and with the subscribers, everything else. But we have now been officially briefed on this upcoming NFL slate.
Yeah, we've been briefed on this NFL slate, everything important, but what have you been watching? What have you been listening to this week?
Yes, so it's been long overdue, but based on the Bucks and how great they've been, I thought maybe it's time I watch a pirate movie. And so I've never seen Pirates of the Caribbean. And so this week I decided let's watch the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, which I think was like Dead Man's Chest or something like that. Or no, Curse of the Black Pearl. I watched Pirates of the Caribbean, and I actually really enjoyed it. It was fun. I understand the appeal. There's 5 of them. Maybe I watch all of them, but I finally got to see what iconic Johnny Depp role is with the Captain Jack Sparrow. And I totally get the appeal. It's definitely a little campy. It's a Disney movie, but if you're into pirates like we are, especially following the greatness of the Bucks this season, it's a fun watch. I would watch. I'm probably going to watch the rest of the series, but Yeah, great watch. I enjoyed it. Have you seen The Black Pearl?
Yeah, I've seen all of them except for the fourth one. I don't think I've watched all the way through, but I think Black Pearl, like it's the first one, and I think it's a really good installment, especially when you go back and just watching a movie like that was a blockbuster that came out in the early 2000s. It just has this element of fun and kind of charm that you just don't get from Disney blockbusters today. I mean, I feel like if you just compare this to any like Marvel movie that comes out now, even like the fifth one that came out in 2018 or 2017 with them, I think they just have a lot more charm and like blockbusters. Like they kind of, even if they were like a little bad, a little campy, it at least feels like a spectacle. At least feels like they're trying and it's a fun movie that you can kind of just turn your brain off and enjoy. It's a series that's probably more similar to like the Fast and Furious or like Transformers franchise if we're like rating it as a series, but I think they're fun.
Yeah, they're fun. This was like their first installment. I've heard their best one is Dead Man's Chest. I think that's like the most highly regarded from what I know.
The second
But
one, yeah, is the best.
the second one's the best. Yeah. So yeah, I'll probably check it out. But I enjoyed it. They're fun movies. Um, and this is probably his most iconic role, Johnny Depp. There's like a few others you can shout out, but this is like his main blockbuster character, and I see why. I mean, he's charming in the movie. There's a lot of fun, um, and so yeah, I'm a fan. But what have you been watching recently? I've watched Pirates. What have you watched?
Yeah, so I was looking for like I don't know, kind of just a scary movie. I don't know what I was looking for, and I saw this movie on Peacock starring Sean Bean called Hitcher,
Hmm.
and the credits open up and it says in association with Michael Bay. So Michael Bay didn't even think he was good enough to direct this movie, but essentially what this movie is you have two people on a road trip, boyfriend and girlfriend, and they're going to meet her friends. Oh my god, do you think your friends will like me? You had kind of have that whole banter, and they end up just having the worst trip possible. They're driving in the rain, and they almost hit Sean Bean's character, who's kind of just this weird guy. And then down the road, he ends up showing up at a gas station, and essentially they pick him up from the gas station. They're like, "Yeah, we'll drive you to a motel. No big deal." And he just starts saying really weird stuff. The girlfriend was really uncomfortable with it. Like, no, why are we bringing a stranger into the car? And like, rightfully so. If you see a hitchhiker, someone you don't know, maybe don't pick them up on the side of the road. And he's like, "Oh, you have a pretty girlfriend. How long have you been fucking her for?" And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Dude, how long have you been fucking your wife for?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm not married. I just wear this wedding ring so people think I'm trustworthy." He's like, "Are you?" No. And he just pulls out a knife on them. So they end up kicking him out of the car. The next day, they see him in the car with this family, and then their car ends up they try and warn them essentially like, "Hey, this guy tried to kill us. He's dangerous. Get him out of your car." And there's like a family of four driving down the road, and then in doing that, semi truck almost hits them. They fly off the cliff. They have to walk back to get the car, and then when they get up to the highway, they see this family just dead in the car, and then the dad is still alive and he has a knife stuck in him, and he essentially tries to frame them for murdering this family because they have the genius idea of taking the car with the murdered family and the guy dying with a knife inside of him into town. And then Sean Bean's character is just ends up messing with them the rest of the movie, and then tries to frame them for murder and like killing this family. So it's one of those movies that it's like a bad but like really funny guilty pleasure movie. You kind of like have to like explain the first 15 minutes of it for it to make sense, but it was kind of enjoyable.
Yeah, it looks like the ratings of it are not great. But it looks. I mean, I think the best horror movies are the worst horror movies, in my opinion. Like we can watch the classics. You can watch movies like The Shining, which are technical masterpieces in some regard. But then you can watch movies like this, where like it's scary, but it's not that scary. It's just funny. And I feel like horror movies are better when they're comedies and they're unintentional comedies. Like when I previewed The Birds a couple of weeks ago, the Alfred Hitchcock movie, where it's just
Yeah.
raining birds basically and birds are causing havoc. Like those are the horror movies that I get up for because they're just great. They're funny. And horror movies, like, they're supposed to be kind of funny, I feel like. So yeah, I mean, this was a remake apparently of another movie back in the 80s, but
I
it
didn't
looks like
know that.
Sean Bean's character was heavily regarded in this. Looks like he won a Teen's Choice Award for it.
You know, Sean Bean in this movie, like he was like funny, like charming, and some of the dialogue, it's just like the line I said earlier, like, "Oh, your girlfriend's hot. Like, how long have you been fucking her for?" And then also at the gas station, there's like another tweaker guy that's like drooling over her as well, where you just have that Michael Bay kind of level dialogue in this one where it's just a little bit off, but Sean Bean's character shines through as like likable enough, and the couple themselves are just one of those couples you love to just hate watch and hope they die.
Yeah. Well, it looks like Michael Bay produced this movie, which
He
anything
did,
Michael
yeah.
Bay touches is always going to be comedic for the wrong reasons.
But
So,
entertaining. I like
but very
Ambulance a
entertaining.
lot, which is a movie he did recently. I don't know if you saw that, but
Ambulance? No, I don't think so. I
Ambulance
just
was
know
good.
I just know he's just one of those guys who he makes his movies, you know they're going to make a bunch of money. You know there's going to be a lot of explosions. And the movie might not be great, but it's going to be a fun watch. He is the definition of like a blockbuster slash just movie theater kind of director, I feel like.
Yeah, but he just has his like isms where like Transformers are like peeing on people and they're like, all right, what are we doing here? But then he'll make a movie like Armageddon or The Rock or Pain and
Yes.
Gain,
And
which is also one of
he's
those
been
movies that's
successful.
like funny for the wrong reason.
He's um he did like the Texas Chainsaw series. He's done the Friday the 13th reboots. So like he can do horror movies. I just feel like with Michael Bay there's going to be that comedic element that he doesn't intend to have.
Yeah, or maybe he does. It's just like kind of funny, off-putting dialogue.
Yeah. And it worked in that case, but yeah, so you watched Hitcher, I watched the Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one. So we have been up to date. We've watched everything. Any other shout outs before we conclude our show today?
Yeah, no, shout out everyone watching, all the new subscribers so far this season. Definitely appreciate that. I'm looking forward to week 7, week 6. Seem like a really fun and competitive week. I think we're going to have another good NFL week. Also, looking forward to Tame Impala's new album coming out this Friday. So look out for that.
Oh shit, new Tame Impala. Yeah, I'll be listening to that for sure. Hell yeah. But we recap week 6, we covered week 7, we talked about the best and the worst, and we've even covered what we've been watching. You have been briefed. Come back. We will be live on Monday this week due to scheduling conflicts, but we will be back on Monday watching the live 2 Monday night games, so you won't want to miss it. Message of always, you know what I'm going to say. Stay brick.